Pattaya City Expats Club is a non-profit social organisation and our speakers are volunteers. The club as such assumes no responsibility or liability for the professional reputation of or the quality of services provided by the speaker today.
Everybody familiar with the Thai tax changes that have come up to this? We've spoken here several times on this. I'm assuming so. The bad news on this is, as of now, this is coming down the pike. Okay, if you are here more than 180 days next year, you're going to have to file a tax return. It will literally take the Minister of the Revenue Department stepping in at this point to stop this process or delay it. There's still a possibility of that, but the probability gets lower every day. However, the highest probability is there is going to be chaos in the system next year with this. There are so many rules and regulations that are not yet in place and open questions that it is going to not be a fun process for my office next year or anyone who's trying to file a tax return. Okay, now that being said, the first and the most important part on this is that the taxation issue in Thailand is only on the money you've remitted into Thailand this calendar year, okay? So if you have not brought any money in from overseas this year, you have no tax issue. If you've been here more than 180 days and you have less than 60,000 baht of income, you do not have to file a tax return. However, I would advise against that because later on they could ask you why you haven't had to file, and then you sort of go through a minimum audit with this. It's probably better to go ahead and file a tax return if you've been here more than 180 days with this. If you are on the newer LTR visa, they have said you do not have to file a tax return. And if you are on one of the older elite visas that had the caveat cooked into it that you were not required to pay taxes here, you also don't have to file a tax return. Those are getting rarer and rarer because they're aging out with this. Everyone else, if you're here for 180 days, you're going to have to file a Thai tax return. Okay? Now, I've spoken a lot of times on different tax treaties on this stuff. Tax treaties can help you tremendously. And at times, if you are taxable only here, you can go back to your home country and talk to them and say, hey, I wasn't supposed to pay tax here. I do have to pay tax in where I'm residing in Thailand. Other times, the Canadians, you guys are incredibly lucky with this. Those stay taxable, the pensions stay only taxable in Canada, not in Thailand with this. If you are, in most cases by the tax treaties, if you are a government employee with this, you are taxed only in the country you're a resident in, or sorry, where the pension came from, not from Thailand. If you've got these questions, give us a call. I'm not in the office. We still have 28 people there who can help you out and a whole staff who can do this. I'm also remoting in about every couple of days with this. The timing of this vacation's not the greatest with the amount of work we have to do, but we're flowing this nicely. Now, ways to plan for this for next year are, if you are married, have a Thai wife, you can gift that Thai wife up to 20 million baht a year and cover your expenses. Now, that money right now, they've not gone through heavy requirements on this, but the way to be safe about this is it needs to come from a foreign account in your name to a foreign account only in her name. Now, she cannot at that point just move the money into your account. Okay, she can't go buy you a car, but she can pay for incidentals. She can pay for the house. She can pay for food, especially education expenses for your kids. All those things can be paid by that Thai wife and or girlfriend with this. So if you do have a Thai partner with this and you aren't married, you can gift her up to 10 million baht a year. However, there was a court case last year where a gentleman came in and said he had given his Thai girlfriend 14 million baht. They wanted to tax that. He went all the way through the court system and they said you have a moral obligation to support this woman as your wife. Therefore, the 20 million baht stands for that exemption. So a long-term girlfriend you've been living with, you can theoretically claim as a wife for the $20 million baht gift on this and be free of tax. We've not yet challenged the $10 to $20 million on the girlfriend. That's a large amount of money. Most cases it would be below 10 million. And again, the 20 million baht and 10 million baht is the maximum. You can give 1 million or 2 million baht a year without an issue. It doesn't have to be 10 million or 20 million baht with this. But again, if you're going to do that, move that from your account in your name to her account here in Thailand in her name only, and then do not have that money transferred from her to your name. That would kick this over. If you brought that money into your account here in Thailand and then gifted it to her, that doesn't work as a deduction because the money that's come into Thailand is taxable first in your name because you've brought it into Thailand. If in question on this, call my office. You guys have a free half-hour consultation to answer these kinds of questions on an individual basis with this. Okay, so it's going to be complex. It's not going to be any fun to this. We've talked to a lot of people about getting tax ID numbers. I'll give time for questions after this. We've got a lot of time for get a tax ID number. Go to the local office now and get this, gentlemen, because there's between 400,000 and 800,000 expats in this country. Right now, their processing time, if you can get the right person to do that, it's about 2 weeks to issue a tax ID number with this. If you can't, we can do this for you. It's a 7,000 baht charge to get you a Thai tax ID number. We're projecting that's going to happen is a lot of people are going to try to go in and get this next year because they're putting off delaying whether they have to pay taxes or not or file a tax return. And you're going to have several 100,000 people go in all at the last minute on this, and it will take their system months to catch up with this. It would be the local tax office. Ren, do you know where anybody know where the local regional tax office is? Okay. Yeah, I think it was near immigration from what I heard, but I'm not quite sure. Yeah, near immigration. Yeah. So get that number soon. It's going to do this. Now, one of the things we get all the time will they deport me if I don't pay my taxes? Well, currently, this is really wacky. Under Thai law, they can't deport you for not having done your tax return and paid your taxes. However, they can deport you for not having your Thai tax ID number and registering for the system with this. I know that makes no sense, but this is part of the joys of taxation with this. So, register for this number, and even if you don't have to file a tax return, you can put that off a little bit. The penalty for filing late, and a huge amount of people are kind of going to have to next year with this, is like 200 to 400 baht if you file late. If you do owe any tax, though, the tax due is at 1.5% per month, and there's no cap on that. Okay? So, one of the dangers of not filing a tax return in this is that at some point, or getting a tax ID number, is they do start linking this by law to your immigration status. And you go in there and they're going to ask, where is did you file your tax return? We need your tax return for this year. And you're like, oh, I haven't filed one yet. Oh, did you file one the previous year? And you start having to backdate this stuff very quickly. You're ahead to go ahead and be proactive on this if you're going to stay and file this in the current year with it. Because when you're having to backdate this and get records, we do a lot of this for Americans living here. It gets much more difficult when you have to go back 3, 4, 5 years of tax documents to try to do this, when it's easier to just go ahead and do this 1 year, each and every year with this. There's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts on what they're going to do. One of the biggest questions we have is over rental property. And people who are bringing that rental income into the country, the question is, can they deduct the expenses like they would in their home country against that rental income if they're bringing the entire rent in? The exact statement coming from the Revenue Department was, we don't know, we're trying to figure that out. There are a lot of functional questions on how they're going to do this stuff with this. We're trying to keep up with this and trying to send out updates as much as possible. It's possible I may send Ren some updates if it occurs throughout the year to this, so that you guys have an announcement on this. Lee and Ken work for Business Class Asia with me. Guys, stand up for a moment to this. I'll have Lee speak in a moment about UK stuff. They're still here. They're going to be my mouthpiece for this. We have opened up an office here in Pattaya as well. The only thing we do not have is a sign on the door, but we are fully legal in view till A5. You can begin to set up appointments. You can contact my office. You can contact Ken or Lee, and we can set this up and help you get going. If you're going to do this next year, do this early with us. I have a staff of 28. I think we're going to be able to handle 4,000 to 5,000 Thai tax returns. That leaves 400,000-ish people wondering where they're going to go, and I can tell you very, very few people know how they're doing this. One example of that is my assistant is a beautiful girl named Cha-Cha. She has an LLM in International Tax Law from Queen's Mary University and Law School in London to this. One of only 2 Thais in the country with that degree. And I have been sending her down every other day to the Revenue Department to ask new questions. The main office of Thai taxation has asked her to come in and teach them how to read tax treaties. This is how little is known on this. They've come to my firm specifically to ask about doing this. Now, secondarily to that, okay, is, and this is again a big portion of the chaos, the main office in Bangkok is starting to get a little bit of a handle on this, okay? They know this is coming down the pike. The higher ups are looking at this. The international tax experts are working on as many of these issues as they possibly can. However, when you go to the local office here and you ask questions, that information is not being disseminated properly to the local offices. I mean, we were in Udon Thani a couple weeks ago speaking to another group with this, and you know, the stuff that local office has been telling those people is completely counter what the main office in Bangkok is saying. They just don't know. Now, this is not the fault of the local office, guys. The information is not flowing properly down at a fast enough pace to be able to do this. You know, I hate to tout our own horn. That's part of the reason why work with us or talk to us at least. We can give you what the authorities are saying in this. Do this. You know, I've been speaking here for, actually, I think it was about 6 years ago the first time I spoke with you guys. 5 or 6 years ago. It's been a long time. Now, you guys are a core part of the firm. I think when I started, we were 4 people working with you guys. We're now 28, and we're probably going to be 40 here sooner rather than later on this. We are the experts at doing this. But be aware this is coming down the pike. Now, Lee was having a conversation with a gentleman earlier about this, and he pointed out a big point on this. At times, especially if you're remitting just a sort of a basic amount of money to live here off of, a lot of people are saying, I'm going to get out of this country, blah, blah. Tax bill might be 10, 15, 20,000 baht. Is it worth uprooting your life to try to avoid 20,000 baht over this? And if you want to bring in a larger amount of money, you can plan and do that in proper ways with this. It's not worth saying, I've got to get out of the country to handle this, when the secondary part of this is most other countries have a global taxation system when you're there for 180 days. This is unusual. Vietnam does not. Vietnam still has the incomes overseas. It's not, but right now Vietnam is in economic chaos. It's in free fall from their real estate implosion to this. This is the standard way it works. When you bring money into a country, when you live there for 180 days, you're going to be tax resident in this. Now, it is viable for some people. They say, yeah, wait a second, I was only here for 4 months a year, or six and a half months a year. I'll just stay less than 6 months. 180 days outside the country, this doesn't become your issue. But if you're going to try to buy a house, going to try to do other things, this is where planning can come into effect. Tax treaties can be your friend. If you move money in ways that allow you to utilize different tax treaties, you can save on taxes globally with this. You know, it's very important. Planning has now come into effect for everybody. You know, the Americans in the room, we've gotten a lot of money back on IRAs and 401ks back because the tax treaty says they're not taxable in the United States, they're only taxable here, you know, with it. But those tax treaties are suddenly becoming very important for everyone else. But again, gentlemen, only on the money you have brought into Thailand this year. Now, the best bit of news of all of this is if you had that money in a savings account last year at the end of the year, so it was sitting in your checking account, say you had $25,000 or $30,000 in that account, you can just say, I brought in $25,000 out of my checking account this calendar year and you're going to be free of tax. That's the cutoff date for savings to this. Anything after that point becomes income, with it. Now, we don't have a lot of rules and regulations on what they're going to require to show cost basis. So you say you bought a certificate of deposit in the United States, you cashed that in this year, you brought the entire amount in. Are they going to allow the amount of money you put into the CD as principal and then only interest? They've not given us a lot of detail on that. The good news about this, though, is they're not requiring that documentation on the tax returns. They're just requiring the stipulation of where this money came from and where it goes to this, and if you're using a tax treaty, the tax treaty designation. However, if you do this, make sure you have the documentation to show where that money came from in the past, because at some point they can come back and ask you these questions with this. Now, there's going to be a lot of leeway and slippage here. You're going to have friends that are going to say, through next year, I haven't filed a tax return and they haven't talked to me at all, blah, blah, I didn't get a tax ID number on this, do this. The Thai revenue knows this, and they know that each year the screw gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And as that screw gets tighter and tighter and tighter, 3-4 years from now, when they look at your tax issue, they're going to say, wait a second, you didn't file it for all the previous years, go back in and have to do that, and if you do owe taxes, your interest will get very, very stiff in this with it. I've been doing taxes for close to 30 years now. I have never seen anything that's going to be like this. This is a tidal wave coming from my company with this, and my worry is, do I have anywhere near enough capacity? Again, you guys get first dibs in here as an automatic to this. We'll fit you in, but do try to get in early on this, to this. Now I'll do a series of questions because I know there's going to be a whole bunch of these. Part of the reason I didn't do a bunch of slides, you're going to have stuff. Although I do want to say Lee Stevens is going to come up for a few minutes after this too. They've just changed taxation in the UK with the UK budget, and that directly affects anybody here from the UK with this heavily. Although, Ren, do you want him to do that now, or you want me to questions first?
We'll do a few questions first.
A few questions, okay.
Sir, can you say something about countries that have no treaty?
Excuse me?
Say something about countries that have no treaty with Thailand. Tax treaty.
Don't have a taxation treaty with Thailand.
That is a bit of an open question, okay? Because a foreign tax credit, which means taxes you paid in another country, are generally deductible here in this country to this. Thailand currently does not have that rule in place for the no tax treaty countries. There are 64 of them with this, but in that particular case, you could actually be double taxed. They've not given us any guidance yet on the non-tax countries. Other than the statements they've had, you could end up with double taxation in those situations. It's rare. There's 64, 66 countries right now with tax treaties, most expats, but it is possible you could suffer double taxation on the money you're remitting it. If that's the case, you need to really do planning and move your money through a conduit into here that would take advantage of a tax treaty. Lee's actually sitting right next to you. He would be the guy you'd want to talk to because you'd want to move that through somewhere like Hong Kong where there's a solid tax treaty and flow the money through. Government pensions, and now this is one of the big confusions of this. Old age pensions, okay? Social Security in the United States is one of them. Australian has an old age pension as well, okay? Another term would be state pension, okay? Most of the tax treaties, you look at the government pensions and say, oh, I don't have to pay tax on this because it's a government pension, blah, blah. But when you actually read the tax treaties, most of the time it will say for services rendered to the state, which means you have to have worked for the government of that country in order to use that government pension. So if you were a military veteran, like our gentleman earlier, his UK pension stays taxable only in the UK. To that, he was a government employee through there, but with it. So that generally goes all the way down through the system to local municipalities as well with it. We don't, no, that would not be the case for no tax treaties. That's specific to tax treaties.
Is there an exemption on money received as a gift from a parent, a spouse, or a child?
Yes, okay. Estates are not taxable, so estate distributions are not taxable, and theoretically money that you receive as a gift would not be taxable as well. The paper trail of that has not been done yet, and there's seemingly no limit on estates as well with this.
Yes. Money from your son.
Yeah, it's the paper trail doing that is unclear at this particular point, but by the rules, yes, you were able to receive a gift. And this could even occur to you, say you have a non-Thai spouse here as well. Your wife is French. You could theoretically, by the law, gift her the money as well from a foreign account, and she would receive this free of tax. Now, how Thai revenue is going to interpret it going from one spouse who's a foreign national to another spouse, they're going to be they're very unclear on those rules yet. The only clarity we have right now is to a Thai national. What is it?
I thought you have a proof that this.
Yeah. It should work, but when you come into what these guys are going to come up to, we can't guarantee that yet. So, by the law, yes, that should be free of tax. The estate issue is definitely clear, but a gift from a son to you, problem, but not 100% yet on the procedures of what that proof will need to be, how it needs to be certified, those kind of things. Yeah.
I have a question about couple married, Falang and Thai. They are one tax unit, or they are two tax units?
Generally two tax units.
That means when I pay my wife a salary for my abroad account, how much I can give her? You said something about 22 million baht.
Okay. Salary, no. If you pay her a salary for a job,
yeah,
that's taxable income to her.
20,000 baht?
20,000 baht is taxable income to her. Okay, now she's exempt on 150,000 baht of income through this, but so free of tax. But that's a 5% rate, it steps up about every 150,000. A gift, this is not a salary, but you can gift your Thai spouse 20 million Thai baht a year, and she has no tax obligation, and you have no tax obligation.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's new for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you have Thai children and you're paying for your children here, you're paying for their education, that's also free. Charitable gifts, there's no taxation on as well.
Okay.
Now, one bit of this is, I get this conversation all the time. I'm going to go to the car dealer and I'm going to gift them the 2 million baht for my Mercedes GLA, and they're going to gift me a car back. Will that be free of tax? Well, the first problem with that is the car dealer has no obligation to give you your car because you've gifted them the money, and two, you cannot get something back for that gifted purpose to this. So no, you cannot gift your car dealership 2 million baht and then gift you a car with this. So there are specific. If it starts to get wacky on the gift question, give us a call. We'll try to do the best interpretation we can for you.
Knowing that this was coming down the pipe, I sent all my IRA and 401k money, thanks to your help, before all of this happened.
Yeah.
So this year, I brought in absolutely zero money.
Yeah.
The only income I have in Thailand is the little bit of interest in my bank account. So I do need to fill out a tax return this year.
Yeah.
And I just have to register the fact that I made this much interest and I already paid this much in fees or tax that the bank took out.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to be getting money back.
Yeah.
Is that advisable for me?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely about, because the one thing about this is, if there's going to be a lot of people who did this who are not going to be required to file a tax return less than 60,000 baht. The problem with that is, at some point in the future, they can come back to you and say, if you haven't filed a tax return, they can sort of make you go through an audit to justify why you didn't have to file a tax return. So, you know, that's going to cost a lot more than $400 to go sit there with the revenue office and justify why you didn't have to file a tax return. In a way, not filing a tax return is going to put the burden of proof that you didn't have to file a tax return on you rather than them too. And they specifically stated that with us. Yes, they don't have to file a tax return, but yes, we could call them in and make them justify the fact that they don't have to file a tax return, i.e. they being you guys.
Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate the information. I'm going to be setting up a web page sometime in the very near future, whereby I'm going to try to put together as much information as we do know and comment on what we don't know, and so forth. I do want to mention, you had mentioned previously getting a tax ID number. Yeah. And there is at least one law accounting firm here in Pattaya that will do it. I know I went down and have given them all the documentation, and their fee is 3,250 baht.
Yeah, so I can't guarantee that somebody's going to be,
right. Also, I'm going to include that information on the webpage along with what documents they said they need. The application form itself is all in Thai, so I would be very interested in anybody reporting to me if they go to the revenue office on their own or with somebody else and apply for an ID number and are able to get it, or what their experience is, because that would help me. But the anyways, for the company that I used, when I gave them the paperwork, they said about 5 to 10 days, and about 5 days later, I received a call where they said, we've submitted your documents, and the revenue office said it would be at least 2 weeks. From
submission time into the tax revenue office right now, it's taking us about 2 weeks. Again, expect that to go nuts. Now, the other side of this is, from the personal experiences, I've heard so many different stories on this. I've heard that, that you walk in the tax office, oh, you don't know any tax yet, get this next year. You don't need this now. I've had, one gentleman was saying that he walked in and he was Australian. The tax revenue officer wasn't going to do it at first until she figured out he was Australian. She'd been married to an Australian in the past, and she expedited the whole process to this. There have been so many varieties of different stories on how this is done. The success rate for going in on your own, especially without a Thai wife, is pretty low, probably 15%. If you've got a pretty good adept Thai wife, it's probably 25% success rate on getting this number with this. But like I said, it is something you do on your own. You can walk in there and research this. If you call us, we'll send you the list of documents you need in English on how to get this thing with no staff.
Just quickly, are there any Australians here who live in Thailand full-time? Any Australians live here full-time?
Right behind you.
All right, cool. Well, you have to get a Thai tax number, okay? Because Australia now is basically bringing in de facto world tax. If you're not, it doesn't matter if you've never been to Australia for 10, 20 years, you're an Australian citizen, we will tax you on worldwide income unless you are registered in another tax regime somewhere.
Yeah.
So you don't have a choice if you're Australian.
Canada just came down in order to give up their residency, very similar system to that. Sweden was next on that. Sweden's already implemented the same thing. And then I believe France and Austria are moving the same way. Yeah. That idea of, we don't have too many in here, but I do several conferences for digital nomads. These guys floating around the world and never being tax residents somewhere, it's going away. But yeah, you will
Last
need
question over here.
I'd like to know, what is the statute of limitations for the tax regime here?
I believe it's 3 years if you filed a return. I'm not sure what it is if you haven't filed a return. 5 years. Yeah.
My ex was the International Tax Counsel for the U.S. Treasury. We went around the world negotiating tax treaties for the U.S.
I
And she
must be a
taught those
really
out.
interesting person.
Right, and I learned a lot about taxes,
Yeah.
including I didn't pay any because I figured out how not to.
Yeah.
But here it sounds like it's a different regime. The people that you said are LLM, she taught
Yeah.
the LLM people. In other words, they need somebody like her, not her, she's busy, to come here and set them straight so that they are in harmony with the international accords. I've read the tax treaty for here, negotiated,
Yeah.
not by her, but long before her.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear that it excludes our Social Security
Yeah.
income. But you mentioned Canada.
For you, yeah, because we tried to do this on this. For U.S. citizens, okay, Social Security is taxable only in the United States. Government pensions, government employee pensions, taxable only in the United States. Now, private pensions and annuities and other similar remuneration are taxable only here under Article 19. You'll get some conflict on the what's called the savings clause, but oddly the residency clause for residents here overrides the savings clause, and you get through with this. So what that means for everybody is that if you are a U.S. citizen, you can take out your IRA or 401ks, private pensions, free of U.S. tax, and if you don't bring it into here in your way, you are free of Thai tax as well. We've been very successful, tens of millions of dollars in refunds using that U.S. tax treaty.
Yeah. If a married couple are both foreigners, do they file a joint tax return, or do they have to?
Right now, they're telling us file it separately.
Separate. So, for example, if someone brought in, would bring in $1 million every year, 500 for her, 500 for you, less tax, right?
Yeah, theoretically, yes. Now, it's best to separate those accounts. Yes, where it goes in one account versus another. You know, part of the questions on this they haven't gone to. Now, again, the rules actually state that you could gift your wife out of your account overseas $1 million baht to this, but they haven't given us any detail on whether they're really going to follow through with that or not. The gifting for non-Thais, very, very vague at this point.
Has there been any thinking on the treatment of tax residents who operate a foreign business from here? For example, I incur some expenses for my business. I put it on a credit card which is dedicated for my business, and I pay that out of my business account in the U.S., but I'm in Thailand. Is that going to be considered a remittance when it's not a personal expense, when it's not out of a personal? I mean, this is I've been doing legitimately for years.
Yeah, no, that's technically the digital nomad side of this. Okay. Right now, okay, digital nomads are one of the biggest catch-22s of this. Okay, because under general international terms, where you are performing work for salary has first rights of taxation generally on anything. So, you know, especially not so much the business. So if you have the company overseas, that's okay. But especially for self-employed, if you're performing it here, the work should be paid, the taxation should be paid here. That's not the system that Thailand's currently using though. It's only on the money that you remit it. So if you're operating a business in the United States and it's profitable in the United States and taxed in the United States or whichever other country right now, that's not an issue if you're not bringing the money in. Where it's going to get wacky is when you're bringing money in. Now, right now, and there's a gentleman, expat tax or something out there as well, bringing service. He stated that credit cards and ATM cards will have to be tracked along with this. However, we've talked directly with the Revenue Department on this. They said that credit cards and debit cards are not currently being tracked in these situations and will not need to be put on these forms, subject to change. Okay, so anything, if you're spending money on a credit card or you're here at all, it's kind of irrelevant from a Thai standpoint at this particular point because they're not even coming close to tracking that money. But as far as the digital nomads of who's going to tax that when to here, as he said, they've got to begin to mesh their system now with the international system. They haven't gotten that far yet. But for right now, if you aren't bringing that money in, and you're only bringing it in through ATMs and debit or credit cards, not a tax issue.
All right, thank you so much, Thomas. Yes, I know. Please get it up.
We're going to leave for a few minutes here because the UK tax changes have changed dramatically for you guys.
As you understand, this is an unusually long morning because we had two major speakers who had normally been mainline speakers that just happened to be done on the same day. Please take yet another deep appreciation of it. Darryl wants to give special thanks. He took your advice.
Guys, don't hesitate to give us a call. You know, I'm not one of those firms who's out there sitting there trying to charge you for every minute of where we're doing stuff with this. You can take advantage of that free half hour if you got any questions. You know, my staff is very, very good, and I'll be in constant communication as well, just physically not here, or remotely. Take advantage of that if you have questions to this.
Yeah.